You're sitting at home right now, minding your own business, thinking you're a perfectly law-abiding citizen. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You've probably committed at least 5 crimes today without even knowing it. And I'm not talking about speeding or jaywalking. In Switzerland, flushing your toilet after 10 p.m. in an apartment building is illegal. In Alabama, wearing a fake mustache in church that causes laughter is a criminal offense. In Singapore, failing to flush a public toilet can get you fined. In the UK, it's illegal to handle a salmon in suspicious circumstances. Yes, suspicious salmon handling is an actual crime. Welcome to the bizarre world of laws that somehow still exist in the 21st century. We're not talking about ancient regulations that were forgotten and never removed from the books. We're talking about laws that are actively enforced, that people get fined for breaking, and that governments defend keeping on the books. Today, we're diving deep into the most absurd, head-scratching, and genuinely insane laws that exist right now in countries around the world. From food regulations that make no sense, to clothing restrictions that seem like jokes, to bizarre prohibitions that leave you wondering what historical incident possibly led to their creation. By the end of this video, you'll realize that the legal system isn't just complicated, it's sometimes completely detached from reality. So buckle up, because we're about to tour the planet's most ridiculous legislation. And trust me, it's even crazier than you think. Part 1. Food and Drink. Laws that defy logic. Chapter 1. When governments decided to control your snacks. Let's start with something everyone can relate to. Food. You'd think what you eat would be your own business, right? Well, governments around the world have different ideas, and some of their food laws are absolutely baffling. In France, it's illegal to name a pig Napoleon. Yes, you read that correctly. Somewhere in French legal code, there's a prohibition against giving pigs the name of their most famous emperor. The law dates back to 1814 and was meant to protect Napoleon's dignity. Nearly 200 years later, it's still on the books. Imagine being a French farmer who genuinely wants to name your pig Napoleon because you think it's funny. You can't. It's against the law. The police could theoretically show up at your farm and issue you a citation for porcine nomenclature violations. The best part? France has no similar laws protecting any other historical figures. You can name your pig Louis XIV, Marie Antoinette, or Charles de Gaulle without legal consequences. But Napoleon, that's where France draws the line. Moving to Italy, we find laws that are equally protective of food traditions. In Italy, it's illegal to serve spaghetti with meatballs. This isn't some obscure regulation from centuries ago. This is actively defended by Italian food authorities who consider spaghetti and meatballs an abomination against Italian cuisine. The Italian government takes food extremely seriously. They have committees dedicated to protecting traditional Italian dishes from what they consider culinary crimes. Spaghetti with meatballs, being an Italian-American invention rather than authentically Italian, doesn't make the cut. Restaurants in Italy that cater to tourists and serve spaghetti with meatballs technically violate food authenticity regulations. Most get away with it because enforcement is selective, but the law exists, and Italian food purists will absolutely lecture you about it. Italy also has laws protecting specific food products based on region. Champagne can only come from Champagne, France. Similarly, Parmigiano Reggiano can only come from specific Italian provinces. These protected designation of origin laws make sense for preventing fraud, but Italy takes it to extremes. In some Italian regions, it's illegal to serve cappuccino after 11 a.m. in establishments that claim to serve traditional Italian coffee. The reasoning is that milk-based coffee drinks are breakfast beverages, and serving them later violates Italian coffee culture. Tourists who order cappuccinos at 3 p.m. are technically requesting that establishments break cultural food laws. Most places will serve them anyway, because money is money, but traditional Italian cafes will absolutely judge you, and in some cases refuse. Let's hop over to Singapore, where the government has strong opinions about chewing gum. In 1992, Singapore banned the import and sale of chewing gum entirely. The reason? People were sticking gum on subway doors, preventing them from closing and disrupting the public transportation system. Singapore's solution wasn't to fine people for vandalism or littering. It was to ban gum entirely. For over a decade, you couldn't buy chewing gum anywhere in Singapore. In 2004, Singapore slightly relaxed the ban to allow therapeutic gum like nicotine, gum for quitting smoking, but only with a prescription from a doctor. Yes, you need a prescription to buy certain types of gum in Singapore. If you're caught smuggling regular chewing gum into Singapore for sale, you face up to 2 years in prison and significant fines. The punishment for gum trafficking is more severe than many drug offenses in other countries. Tourists can bring gum for personal use, but selling it or giving it to others is illegal. Singapore takes its gum ban seriously, and people have been prosecuted for violating it. The weirdest part, Singapore's gum ban has become a point of national pride. Government officials defend it as an example of Singapore choosing cleanliness and order over individual freedom. The ban is popular domestically, with most Singaporeans supporting it. Moving to the United States, we find a patchwork of bizarre food laws that vary by state and city. In Alabama, it's illegal to carry an ice cream cone in your back pocket. This law originated in the 19th century when horse thieves would put ice cream in their pockets to lure horses away. The horses would follow the ice cream scent, and thieves could claim the horse followed them voluntarily rather than being stolen. So Alabama banned ice cream in back pockets, specifically to prevent horse theft by ice cream. The law was never repealed. Technically, walking around Alabama with ice cream in your back pocket is illegal, even though the horse theft problem it was designed to prevent no longer exists. In Georgia, it's illegal to eat fried chicken with anything other than your hands. This law was supposedly created in Gainesville, Georgia, which bills itself as the poultry capital of the world, as a publicity stunt to promote chicken consumption. The law was passed in 1961 and was meant to be tongue-in-cheek, but it's still on the books. In 2009, a tourist was actually arrested for eating fried chicken with a fork as part of a publicity stunt testing the law. The charges were dropped, but the law remains. California has its own strange food regulations. In Los Angeles, it's illegal to lick a toad. This law was created in response to people licking certain toad species to get high from the toxins on their skin. Rather than treating this as a public health issue or drug abuse problem, California made it a criminal offense to lick toads. If caught licking a toad in California, you can be fined and prosecuted. The law specifies certain toad species, particularly the Colorado river toad, which secretes psychoactive toxins. Regular toads are apparently fine to lick, though why you'd want to is another question. In Delaware, it's illegal to sell dog hair. The law doesn't explain why dog hair sales are prohibited, while cat hair, horse hair, or any other animal hair can be sold freely. Just dog hair is the problem. This creates interesting legal questions. If you're a dog groomer in Delaware and someone wants to buy the fur you've collected for crafting purposes, you can't legally sell it. You could give it away, but selling it violates Delaware law. Moving internationally, we find even stranger regulations. In Switzerland, it's illegal to own just one guinea pig. Guinea pigs are social animals, and Swiss law requires that they be kept in pairs or groups. This law is part of Switzerland's comprehensive animal welfare regulations, which are among the strictest in the world. The reasoning is that guinea pigs get lonely and depressed when kept alone, so keeping a single guinea pig constitutes animal cruelty. If your guinea pig dies and you're left with one, you're technically required by law to get another guinea pig. Some Swiss pet stores offer guinea pig rental services specifically for this situation, allowing people to rent a companion guinea pig while searching for a permanent new pet. Switzerland also has laws about fish welfare. It's illegal to flush live fish down the toilet, and keeping goldfish in round bowls is prohibited because the curved glass distorts their vision and causes stress. These laws seem absurd to outsiders, but reflect Swiss cultural values about animal welfare. The Swiss genuinely believe animals have rights that should be legally protected, even if it means regulating guinea pig ownership. In the UK, the Salmon Act of 1986 makes it illegal to handle salmons in suspicious circumstances. The law was designed to prevent salmon poaching, but the wording is so vague that it's become a joke. What constitutes suspicious circumstances? The law doesn't specify. Technically, any salmon handling could be deemed suspicious if an officer decides it looks questionable. People have been prosecuted under the Salmon Act, usually for actually poaching salmon from protected rivers, but the absurd wording has made it one of the most mocked laws in British legal history. The UK also has the Town Police Clauses Act of 1847, which makes it illegal to slide on ice or snow in public. The law was meant to prevent people from creating dangerous icy patches on sidewalks, but as written, it criminalizes sledding, ice skating on frozen ponds, or any sliding activity. No one enforces this law against children sledding, but it's technically illegal. A strict interpretation would make most winter fun activities criminal offenses. Chapter 2: Alcohol laws that make no sense. If food laws are weird, alcohol regulations are completely insane. Governments have been trying to control drinking for centuries, and many of those attempts have resulted in laws that are still on the books today. In Indiana, it's illegal to sell cold beer at gas stations or grocery stores. Only liquor stores can sell refrigerated beer. Warm beer is fine for gas stations, but cold beer requires a liquor license. The reasoning supposedly relates to preventing impulse drinking and driving. If beer is warm, you can't drink it immediately in your car. You have to take it home and refrigerate it first. This logic falls apart immediately when you consider that liquor stores sell cold beer, and people could still drink warm beer in their cars. But the law persists because liquor store owners lobby to maintain their competitive advantage. Indiana also prohibits liquor stores from selling cold soda or mixers. Liquor stores can sell alcohol and room temperature soft drinks, but not cold ones. The law creates the absurd situation where you buy cold beer and warm Coke from the same store. In Texas, it's illegal to take more than 3 sips of beer while standing. This law supposedly dates back to frontier days when rowdy cowboys would stand at bars drinking, and requiring them to sit was meant to reduce bar fights. No one enforces the 3-sip law today, but it's still in the Texas legal code. Technically, standing at a bar and taking 4 sips of beer without sitting makes you a criminal. Oklahoma has even stranger alcohol laws. Until 2018, Oklahoma required that beer sold in grocery stores couldn't exceed 3.2% alcohol by weight. Regular strength beer could only be sold in liquor stores. The law was finally changed, but for decades, Oklahomans either drank weak beer from grocery stores or made special trips to liquor stores for normal beer. Beer companies had to produce special Oklahoma-only formulations. Oklahoma also prohibited serving alcohol in establishments where people could see alcohol being mixed. Bars had to mix drinks out of customers' sight. This law was meant to prevent the glamorization of alcohol consumption. The result was that Oklahoma bars had to build special mixing areas hidden from customer view. Bartenders mixed drinks behind screens or in back rooms, then brought finished drinks to customers. These laws were based on Oklahoma's deeply religious culture and Prohibition-era thinking. Despite being obviously outdated, they persisted for decades because changing them required overcoming religious opposition. In Tuospoe, Pennsylvania, the state government controls all liquor sales through state-run stores. You can't buy wine or spirits at grocery stores or private retailers. All alcohol sales go through the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board. This creates situations where Pennsylvania residents drive to neighboring states to buy alcohol because selection is better and prices are lower. The state loses tax revenue while inconveniencing residents. Pennsylvania's system dates back to post-prohibition efforts to control alcohol consumption. The idea was that government-run stores would be more responsible than private retailers. Nearly a century later, the system remains, despite being unpopular and inefficient. In Massachusetts, it's illegal to have happy hour. Bars and restaurants cannot offer discounted drinks during specific time periods. The law was passed in 1984 after a drunk driving accident was blamed on happy hour promotions. The logic was that discounted drinks encourage excessive consumption. So banning happy hour would reduce drunk driving. Whether it actually worked is debatable, but the ban remains. Massachusetts bars find creative workarounds. They can't offer happy hour, but they can offer reverse happy hour, where drinks are more expensive during certain times and regular price other times. They can also offer free food with drink purchases or other promotions that don't technically violate the happy hour ban. In Utah, alcohol laws are famously strict due to the state's large Mormon population. Until recently, Utah required bartenders to mix drinks behind barriers so customers couldn't see alcohol being poured. The Zion Curtain Law was meant to prevent children from seeing alcohol preparation, supposedly protecting them from being influenced to drink. Critics pointed out that hiding alcohol preparation didn't prevent children from seeing adults drinking. Utah also requires restaurants that serve alcohol to classify as either restaurants or private clubs. Private clubs require membership, even if membership is free and instant. This creates the absurd situation of joining a restaurant before you can order a drink. The membership requirement dates back to Utah's efforts to limit alcohol access while complying with federal non-discrimination laws. Rather than allowing open alcohol sales, Utah created the private club loophole. These laws have been gradually relaxed as Utah seeks to appear more normal to tourists and business travelers, but many restrictions remain. In Canada, Quebec has laws requiring that margarine be a different color than butter. Margarine cannot be butter yellow. It must be clearly distinguishable at a glance. This law was created to protect Quebec's dairy industry from margarine competition. By requiring margarine to look different, the law ensured consumers knew they weren't buying real butter. The regulation persisted long after it served any purpose. Modern consumers can read labels and know the difference between butter and margarine, but the law remained until recently because dairy farmers lobbied to keep it. In Japan, dancing was illegal in nightclubs after midnight until 2015. The Fueho Law from 1948 prohibited dancing in venues without special licenses, and those licenses prohibited dancing after midnight. The law was originally meant to regulate post-war dance halls that were associated with prostitution. Decades later, it was still used to shut down nightclubs and prosecute venue owners for allowing dancing. The midnight dancing ban became internationally famous for being absurd. Japan is a modern developed nation, yet dancing after midnight was criminal. After years of protests and ridicule, the law was finally reformed. Chapter 3: Strange Transportation and Vehicle Laws. Transportation laws are meant to keep roads safe and traffic flowing, but some vehicle regulations defy all logic and make you wonder what incident possibly led to their creation. In Denmark, drivers are required to check under their cars for sleeping children before starting the engine. This law seems overly specific until you realize it was created because children actually did sometimes sleep under cars. The law requires a visual check before starting your vehicle. Failing to check and accidentally harming a child sleeping under your car could result in additional penalties beyond the accident itself. Most Danes don't actually follow this law before every drive, but it exists and is technically enforceable. In the Philippines, cars with license plates ending in certain numbers are banned from roads on specific days. The number coding system was meant to reduce traffic congestion by keeping some cars off the road. The result? Wealthy families bought multiple cars with different plate numbers so they could drive any day. Poor families were restricted while the rich found easy workarounds. The policy didn't reduce traffic, because the total number of cars increased. It just redistributed traffic differently across days while annoying everyone. In Germany, it's illegal to run out of gas on the Autobahn. Running out of fuel is considered avoidable and therefore negligent, making it a finable offense. The Autobahn has limited places to stop, so running out of gas creates dangerous situations. The law is meant to encourage drivers to fuel up before entering the Autobahn. If you run out of gas and need roadside assistance, you can be fined for the negligence, in addition to paying for the service call. In Thailand, it's illegal to drive shirtless. Drivers must wear shirts regardless of how hot it is. The law applies to both men and women and is actively enforced. Tourists frequently violate this law unknowingly, especially in beach areas where people drive between beaches and hotels in swimwear. Police use it as an excuse to stop tourists and collect fines. In Russia, it's illegal to drive a dirty car. If your car is too dirty, police can fine you. The definition of too dirty is subjective, giving police broad discretion. The law is meant to ensure license plates are visible, which is reasonable, but it's enforced based on overall car cleanliness, not just plate visibility. During spring muddy season, keeping cars clean is nearly impossible. People get fined repeatedly for having dirty cars that get dirty again immediately. In Alabama, it's illegal to drive blindfolded. Yes, this law exists, which means at some point enough people were driving blindfolded that Alabama needed a specific law against it. You'd think reckless driving laws would cover blindfolded driving, but apparently Alabama felt the need to specifically prohibit it. The existence of this law raises disturbing questions about what was happening in Alabama that required such specific legislation. In Cyprus, eating or drinking while driving is illegal. Not just alcohol, any food or beverage. Taking a sip of water at a red light is technically illegal. The law is meant to prevent distracted driving, but it goes further than most places. Police don't heavily enforce it for minor violations like drinking water, but they can if they want to. In Spain, it's illegal to wear flip-flops while driving. Proper footwear is required by law. Flip-flops are considered too loose and could slip off or interfere with pedals. Beach tourists regularly violate this law, driving to and from beaches in flip-flops. Police can issue fines, though enforcement is inconsistent. Spain also requires that drivers carry 2 warning triangles, a reflective vest, and spare light bulbs in their vehicles at all times. Driving without this equipment is illegal, even if you never need it. These requirements exist throughout the EU to varying degrees, but Spain enforces them strictly. Rental car companies sometimes provide the required equipment, but renters are responsible for ensuring it's present. Part 2. Clothing and Appearance Regulations. Chapter 4. What you wear can get you arrested. You'd think in the 21st century, people could wear whatever they want. You'd be wrong. Countries around the world still have laws dictating acceptable clothing, and some are absolutely ridiculous. In France, it's illegal for women to wear pants. Yes, you read that right. A law from 1800 requires women to get permission from police to dress like a man, including wearing trousers. The law was modified in 1892 and 1909 to allow women to wear pants if riding bicycles or horses. Beyond those specific exceptions, women technically need police permission to wear pants in France. Obviously, this law isn't enforced. Millions of French women wear pants daily without police permission. But it remains on the books because officially repealing it would require legislative action, and politicians don't want to waste time on it. The law has become an embarrassment that France hasn't bothered to formally remove. It's ignored in practice, but technically still exists. In Greece, it's illegal to wear high heels at ancient monuments. The law is meant to protect archaeological sites from damage caused by narrow heels. This makes practical sense. High heels can damage stone surfaces, but the law extends to all footwear with thin heels, and enforcement is inconsistent. Some sites strictly enforce it, requiring women to remove heels or wear provided covers. Other sites ignore it. Tourists often don't know about the law until they're turned away from monuments. In Australia, specifically in Victoria, it's illegal to wear pink hot pants after noon on Sundays. This incredibly specific law supposedly exists, though its origins and current enforceability are disputed. The law allegedly dates back to efforts to control beach attire and public decency. Pink hot pants after noon on Sunday specifically were considered offensive. Whether this law actually exists or is urban legend is debated. It appears in lists of weird laws, but finding the actual statute is difficult. If it does exist, it's certainly not enforced. In Uganda, it's illegal to wear camouflage clothing if you're not in the military. Civilians wearing camo can be arrested and prosecuted. The law is meant to prevent rebel groups from impersonating military personnel, but it also catches tourists wearing camo cargo pants or jackets. Foreign tourists have been arrested for wearing camo-patterned clothing. The Ugandan military takes this law seriously, and violators face genuine legal consequences. Several other African countries have similar laws. Wearing military-style camouflage can get you arrested in Zimbabwe, Zambia, and other nations. In Saudi Arabia, women are required by law to wear abayas, full-length robes, in public. While recent reforms have relaxed some dress code enforcement, the abaya requirement officially remains. Foreign women are technically subject to this law, though enforcement for tourists has become less strict. Saudi women face social and sometimes legal consequences for not wearing abayas. The law reflects religious and cultural norms about modesty. Despite modernization efforts, dress code regulations remain controversial and politically sensitive. In North Korea, approved hairstyles are legally mandated. Men can choose from about 15 approved styles, women from about 18. Unapproved hairstyles are illegal. The government literally publishes guides showing acceptable hairstyles. Hair salons display these government-approved options. People caught with unapproved hairstyles face punishment ranging from mandatory haircuts to more serious consequences, depending on how the deviation is interpreted. Long hair on men is particularly restricted, associated with Western decadence. Women's hair length is also regulated, with very short hair discouraged. In Swaziland, now Eswatini, women were once banned from wearing pants. The law has been officially changed, but cultural enforcement continues. In some areas, when the law was active, women wearing pants could be arrested and charged with public indecency. The king eventually changed the law after international pressure. However, cultural attitudes remain conservative. Women who wear pants in traditional areas may face social consequences, even though it's no longer technically illegal. In Barcelona, Spain, walking around in a bikini or swimsuit away from the beach is illegal. You can't walk through the city in beach attire. This law targets tourists who walk from hotels to beaches or through city streets in swimwear. Barcelona wants to maintain tourist revenue while preventing what locals see as disrespectful behavior. Police enforce this selectively, usually just requiring people to cover up rather than issuing fines. But technically, wearing only swimwear on city streets violates public decency laws. Similar laws exist in other European beach destinations, trying to balance tourism with local quality of life. In Kentucky, it's illegal to dye baby chicks, ducklings, or rabbits, and sell them unless you're selling at least 6 at once. The law is meant to prevent impulse purchases of dyed animals. The specific number 6 is arbitrary. Selling 5 dyed chicks is illegal, but 6 is fine. The reasoning is that buying 6 animals is a more serious decision than buying 1. This law was created because vendors dyed baby animals bright colors to attract children, leading to impulse purchases and animal welfare problems. Chapter 5: Facial Hair and Body Modification Laws. Governments don't just care what you wear, they have opinions about your facial hair, tattoos, and body modifications too. In Iowa, any man with a mustache is forbidden from kissing women in public. This law allegedly exists to maintain public decency and prevent offensive displays. The law's origin is unclear. Perhaps it related to hygiene concerns about mustaches. Maybe it was meant to discourage public affection. Generally, and mustaches were used as the specific restriction. Regardless, the law is never enforced today. Mustachioed Iowans kiss freely without legal consequences. In Oklahoma, it's illegal for women to do their own hair without a state license. To style your own hair professionally, meaning in any formal sense, you need a cosmetology license. This law was created to protect the cosmetology industry from unlicensed competition, but as written, it technically criminalizes women doing their own hair. The law is meant to prevent unlicensed hair salons, not to prosecute women for styling their own hair, but the wording is broad enough to theoretically cover personal hairstyling. In Denmark, you must confirm that your child's name is on a government-approved list of about 7,000 names before officially naming them. Unapproved names require special permission. The law prevents parents from giving children names that could cause social problems or ridicule, but it also restricts personal choice significantly. Names like Pluto, Monkey, and Anus have been rejected. Some parents fight for years to get unapproved names accepted. The name approval process involves submitting applications to the government and waiting for decisions. Parents must choose from pre-approved names or go through bureaucratic channels. In Germany, similar laws exist requiring that names clearly indicate gender and aren't likely to cause the child embarrassment. These laws seem paternalistic to Americans accustomed to naming children whatever they want, but supporters argue they protect children from parental poor judgment. In South Korea, tattoos can only be legally performed by licensed medical doctors. Tattoo artists without medical licenses are practicing illegal medicine. This law has created an underground tattoo industry. Most tattoo artists operate illegally because becoming a doctor just to give tattoos is impractical. Police occasionally raid tattoo shops and prosecute artists. The law is controversial, with tattoo artists arguing their craft shouldn't require medical degrees. The law dates back to when tattoos were associated with criminals. Despite changing attitudes, the medical licensing requirement remains. In Japan, many public bathhouses and hot springs ban people with visible tattoos. While not exactly a law, these private establishment rules are widespread and enforced. Tattoos in Japan are associated with Yakuza organized crime groups. Many establishments ban tattoos to keep out gangsters. This affects foreign tourists and young Japanese people with decorative tattoos. Some establishments have relaxed rules for obvious non-Yakuza tattoos, but many maintain strict bans. Part 3. Animal and Pet Regulations, Chapter 6. When the law gets too involved with your pets. You might think owning a pet is straightforward. You buy an animal, take care of it, and that's that. But governments around the world have created remarkably specific and bizarre laws about pet ownership that go far beyond basic animal welfare. In Turin, Italy, dog owners can be fined up to 500 euros if they don't walk their dogs at least 3 times per day. The law is meant to prevent animal cruelty by ensuring dogs get adequate exercise. The problem is enforcement. How do authorities know if you've walked your dog 3 times? Are they monitoring everyone's dog walking schedules? The law relies mostly on neighbor complaints. If someone reports you for not walking your dog enough, authorities can investigate and potentially fine you. The burden of proof is unclear. Do you need to keep a dog walking log to defend yourself? The law reflects Italy's strong animal welfare culture, but the specific requirement of 3 walks per day seems arbitrary. Why not 2 long walks? Why not 4 short ones? In Reykjavik, Iceland, it was illegal to own a dog in the city until 1984. The ban dated back to the early 20th century and was meant to prevent disease spread. For decades, Reykjavik residents couldn't legally own dogs. They could own cats, birds, or any other pets, just not dogs. People who wanted dogs had to live outside the city limits. The ban was eventually lifted after years of pressure from dog lovers. Today, Reykjavik has plenty of dogs, but for most of the 20th century, Iceland's capital was dog-free by law. In Turin, Italy, yes, again, Turin has many specific pet laws. Goldfish bowls are illegal. Goldfish must be kept in rectangular aquariums, not round bowls. The law is based on animal welfare research, suggesting that curved glass distorts fish vision and causes stress. Round bowls are considered cruel. Pet stores in Turin can't sell round goldfish bowls. If you already own one, technically you're supposed to replace it with a rectangular tank. This law sounds extreme, but it's consistent with Italy's broader animal welfare philosophy that animals have rights requiring legal protection. In Switzerland, as mentioned earlier, social animals like guinea pigs, budgies, and certain other species cannot be kept alone. The law requires that they have companionship of their own species. This creates interesting situations when one pet dies. You can't just have one guinea pig, you must get another. Some services rent companion animals specifically for this purpose. The law applies to multiple species. Keeping a single budgie is illegal. The bird must have at least one companion. Switzerland also requires that cat owners either keep cats indoors, allow them outdoor access to roaming areas, or provide a view of outdoor areas with wildlife. Cats must be mentally stimulated. These laws seem excessive to people from countries with minimal pet regulations, but Switzerland genuinely believes these requirements prevent animal suffering. In Alaska, it's illegal to wake a sleeping bear to take a photograph. This incredibly specific law addresses a real problem: tourists doing dangerous things for photos. Waking a bear is obviously dangerous. The law makes it explicitly illegal, presumably because people were actually doing it. The penalty for violating this law is significant, and it's actively enforced in areas with heavy tourist traffic and bear populations. Alaska also has laws against pushing moose from airplanes. Yes, at some point this happened enough that a specific law was needed. The mental image of someone pushing a moose from an airplane is absurd, but apparently it was a real issue, likely related to hunting or relocation efforts gone wrong. In Maryland, it's illegal to take a lion to the movies. This law exists, which means someone presumably tried to bring a lion to a movie theater. The law doesn't specify why lions specifically are prohibited. Other exotic animals aren't mentioned, just lions. Did someone in Maryland attempt to bring a pet lion to a cinema? Was this a circus lion? We'll probably never know the origin story, but the law remains. In Arizona, it's illegal to hunt camels. Arizona hasn't had wild camels for over a century, but the law prohibiting camel hunting was never repealed. In the 19th century, the U.S. Army experimented with using camels in the Southwest desert. When the experiment ended, some camels were released into the wild. Those camels are long gone, but Arizona's anti-camel hunting law remains on the books, protecting a non-existent population. In France, it's illegal to name a pig Napoleon, as mentioned earlier, but France also has laws about snails. Snails are considered agricultural products in France. There are regulations about snail farming, snail sales, and even which species can be called escargot. You can't just gather any snails from your garden and sell them as escargot. They must be specific species, raised under specific conditions. France takes food seriously, and that extends to detailed regulation of snail commerce. In Oklahoma, it's illegal to wrestle a bear. This law was created when bear wrestling was actually a form of entertainment at some venues. People would pay to watch bears wrestle humans. The bears were usually declawed and defanged, but it was still dangerous and considered animal cruelty. Oklahoma banned the practice. The law specifically prohibits bear wrestling, suggesting other animal wrestling might be fine, though presumably general animal cruelty laws would apply. In Florida, it's illegal to molest a trash panda. The law was created to protect raccoons from harassment and harm. The term molest in legal context means to disturb or interfere with. The law makes it illegal to intentionally bother or harm raccoons. Florida has large raccoon populations that frequently interact with humans. The law prevents people from treating them cruelly or harassing them. In the UK, it's illegal to let your pet mate with a royal pet without permission. this law protects the royal family's breeding lines for their animals. The law is old and rarely relevant today. Most people don't have opportunities for their pets to mate with royal pets. But technically, if you somehow arranged for your dog to mate with one of the Queen's corgis without permission, you'd be breaking the law. In North Carolina, it's illegal to use elephants to plow cotton fields. This incredibly specific prohibition addresses something that apparently happened. Why someone would use an elephant to plow cotton is unclear. Elephants aren't native to North Carolina and seem impractical for cotton farming, but at some point, it happened enough that North Carolina legislators felt compelled to ban it specifically. Chapter 7. Wildlife and hunting regulations gone wrong. Hunting and wildlife laws are necessary for conservation and safety, but some regulations go beyond reasonable into territory that's just bizarre. In Kansas, it's illegal to hunt whales. Kansas is about as far from any ocean as you can get in the United States. There are no whales in Kansas. The law exists anyway. Perhaps it was copied from coastal state legislation, and no one bothered to remove the whale-specific provisions. Or maybe Kansas legislators wanted to be really thorough in their wildlife protection laws and included whales just in case. Either way, Kansas whale hunting prohibition stands as a monument to legislative thoroughness or oversight. In Ohio, it's illegal to get a fish drunk. The law specifically prohibits giving alcohol to fish. The origin of this law is mysterious. Why would someone give alcohol to fish? Was this a problem Ohio faced? Perhaps it relates to fishing practices where people used alcohol-soaked bait. Or maybe someone actually tried to intoxicate fish for some reason. The law exists, making Ohio fish the only ones with specific legal protection against intoxication. In Tennessee, it's illegal to use a lasso to catch a fish. This oddly specific fishing method prohibition raises questions about what happened. Lasso fishing seems impractical and unlikely to succeed. Fish don't have necks to rope, and throwing lassos underwater wouldn't work well. Yet Tennessee felt the need to specifically outlaw this method. Someone must have tried it or claimed to use it. In the UK, it's illegal to handle a salmon in suspicious circumstances, as mentioned earlier. The Salmon Act of 1986 created this wonderful phrase. The law was meant to prevent salmon poaching. Suspicious circumstances refers to possessing salmon that you likely caught illegally, but the vague wording has made the law famous. What makes salmon handling suspicious? That's subjective, making enforcement interesting. In France, it's illegal to kiss fish. This law supposedly exists to prevent spreading diseases to fish populations. Whether this law is real or urban legend is debated. It appears in weird law lists, but finding the actual statute is difficult. If it exists, it presumably targets aquaculture operations or fishing practices, not people randomly kissing fish for fun. In Wyoming, it's illegal to photograph rabbits from January to April without a permit. This specific restriction relates to wildlife photography regulations. The January to April period is breeding season for rabbits. The law protects them from disturbance during this critical time. Professional wildlife photographers know about this law. Tourists photographing wild rabbits in spring could technically violate it unknowingly. In Minnesota, it's illegal to cross state lines with a duck on your head. This incredibly specific prohibition's origin is unknown. Why would someone cross state lines with a duck on their head? Was this a common enough problem to require legislation? The law might relate to poultry transport regulations that got worded strangely. Or maybe it's urban legend. Either way, if you're in Minnesota with a duck on your head, stay within state borders to be safe. In California, it's illegal to set a mousetrap without a hunting license. This law treats mousetraps as hunting equipment requiring licensing. The law seems absurd. Most people don't think of mousetraps as hunting gear requiring government permission. Enforcement is non-existent. Millions of Californians use mousetraps without hunting licenses, but technically, they're breaking the law. Part 4. Public Behavior and Social Conduct. Chapter 8. Activities you can't do in public behavior laws are meant to maintain order and prevent disturbances, but some go far beyond reasonable limits into controlling harmless activities. In Australia, it's illegal to be in possession of 50 kilograms or more of potatoes in Western Australia without a license. The Potato Marketing Corporation Act requires licensing for large potato quantities. This law was created to control potato commerce and protect established potato growers from competition. If you buy a large bag of potatoes for a restaurant or event, you could technically need a license. The law is rarely enforced but exists. In Denmark, escape from prison is not illegal if you're caught. However, any crimes committed during the escape are prosecuted. The philosophy is that wanting freedom is human nature, so merely escaping isn't criminal. But destroying property, assaulting guards, or other actions during escape are crimes. This means if you somehow escape without breaking any laws in the process, nearly impossible, you can't be punished for the escape itself. In Switzerland, it's illegal to flush the toilet after 10 p.m. in apartment buildings. The law is meant to prevent noise disturbances to neighbors. Swiss apartment buildings often have thin walls and good sound transmission. Flushing toilets late at night allegedly disturbs sleeping neighbors. The law is rarely enforced through prosecution, but landlords can include it in lease agreements and evict tenants for violations. Whether this law is national or local regulation varies, but it's widely cited as existing in Swiss cities. In Singapore, it's illegal to walk around your house naked with the curtains open. Being nude in private is fine, but if neighbors can see you, it's indecent exposure. Singapore takes public decency seriously. Even in your own home, if you're visible from outside, you must be clothed. People have been prosecuted for being naked in their own homes when visible through windows. The law reflects Singapore's conservative social values and strict enforcement of decency standards. In London, it's illegal to beat or shake any carpet, rug, or mat in the street after 8 a.m. The Metropolitan Police Act of 1839 prohibits this activity except before 8 a.m. The law was created when people regularly beat carpets in the street to clean them, creating dust clouds that bothered neighbors. Modern vacuum cleaners have made carpet beating obsolete, but the law remains. You can beat carpets until 8 a.m., but after that, you're a criminal. In the UK, it's illegal to die in the Houses of Parliament. This law sounds absurd because you can't control when you die. The law exists because anyone who dies in the Houses of Parliament is technically entitled to a state funeral, which the government wants to avoid. If someone does die in Parliament, they're officially recorded as dying in an ambulance or hospital to avoid the state funeral requirement. The law is impossible to comply with intentionally, making it one of the strangest on the books. In York, England, it's legal to kill a Scotsman within the city walls if he's carrying a bow and arrow. This medieval law was never officially repealed. The law dates back to conflicts between England and Scotland. It's obviously not enforced today, and killing anyone remains murder, regardless of nationality or weaponry. But technically, the old law remains in the legal code, creating the theoretical loophole. In Chester, England, it's legal to shoot a Welsh person with a bow and arrow inside the city walls after midnight. Similar to the York law, this is a medieval remnant. These laws are sometimes tested by activists who ceremonially attempt to invoke them to force official repeal. The government's position is that these laws are superseded by modern criminal law, so formal repeal is unnecessary. In France, it's illegal to call a pig Napoleon. Yes, still coming back to this one, but France also prohibits kissing on train platforms. The kissing ban was created to prevent delays when people said extended goodbyes on platforms, blocking boarding. The law is never enforced today, but it technically exists in some railway regulations. French train platforms see plenty of kissing despite the prohibition. In Iowa, one-armed piano players must perform for free. This bizarre law supposedly exists, though its origin and current status are disputed. Why one-armed piano players specifically Why must they perform for free? The reasoning is completely unclear. This law appears in weird law compilations, but finding official documentation is difficult. It might be urban legend. If real, it's certainly not enforced. One-armed piano players presumably charge for performances without legal issues. In Massachusetts, it's illegal to put tomatoes in clam chowder. This law allegedly exists to protect the integrity of New England clam chowder. Manhattan clam chowder contains tomatoes. New England clam chowder does not. Massachusetts law allegedly takes a position on this culinary debate. Whether this is actual law or urban legend is debated. It might be more social rule than legal requirement, but Bostonians will absolutely judge you for putting tomatoes in clam chowder, legal or not. Chapter 9. Laws about making noise. Noise ordinances are common and reasonable, but some places take them to extremes or create oddly specific sound regulations. In Switzerland, it's illegal to mow your lawn on Sundays. Sunday is designated as a quiet day, and noisy activities like lawn mowing are prohibited. This applies nationwide, with some regional variations on exact restrictions. Swiss people plan their lawn care around this rule. Visiting foreigners who mow on Sundays will have neighbors complaining quickly. The law is part of broader Sunday quiet regulations that restrict various noisy activities. In New York City, it's illegal to make unreasonable noise with a musical instrument between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., except for emergencies. The emergency exception is interesting. What constitutes a musical emergency? A sudden need to play trombone at 2 a.m.? The law is meant to prevent noise complaints while allowing some flexibility. But defining unreasonable noise and musical emergencies is subjective. In Germany, quiet hours, Ruhezeit, are legally mandated. Generally, you must be quiet from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. on weekdays, and all day Sunday. During quiet hours, you can't vacuum, mow lawns, or do other noisy activities. Neighbors can call police for violations. Germans take quiet hours seriously. Violations can result in fines and neighbor conflicts. The regulations extend to construction, deliveries, and anything creating noise during protected quiet times. In Japan, many cities prohibit pachinko parlors from playing loud music before 11 a.m. Pachinko is a popular gambling-adjacent game involving loud machines. The machines themselves are noisy, but the establishments also play music. Morning music restrictions aim to reduce noise pollution. Pachinko parlors are controversial for noise and other reasons, leading to various regulations. In Milan, Italy, smiling is mandatory except during funerals or hospital visits. This law allegedly requires citizens to smile in public. Whether this law actually exists is highly disputed. It appears in weird law lists, but documentation is lacking. If real, it's never enforced. You won't be arrested in Milan for looking grumpy. The story might originate from misinterpretation of politeness customs rather than actual law. Part 5. Bizarre Business and Commerce. Laws, Chapter 10. Regulations that make running a business absurd business. Regulations are meant to protect consumers and ensure fair commerce. But some laws make you wonder what bizarre incident led to their creation. In Nevada, it's illegal to drive a camel on the highway. Nevada hasn't had working camels in over a century, but the law remains. Like Arizona's camel hunting ban, this relates to 19th century camel experiments in the American West. The camels are long gone, but the prohibition on highway camel driving persists. In Alaska, it's illegal to wake a sleeping bear for a photograph, mentioned earlier. But Alaska also prohibits giving alcohol to a moose. Why would someone give alcohol to a moose? Apparently, it happened enough to require a specific law. Moose are large and potentially dangerous. Intoxicated moose are presumably worse. The law exists to prevent this specific form of wildlife harassment and danger to the moose. In Oklahoma, it's illegal to have a sleeping donkey in your bathtub after 7 p.m. This incredibly specific law has a real origin story. In the 1920s, someone's donkey actually fell asleep in a bathtub. When the town flooded, the bathtub floated down the street with the sleeping donkey still in it. The spectacle was apparently embarrassing enough that Oklahoma passed a law preventing future bathtub donkey incidents. The law is never enforced today, but it remains as a monument to that one weird flood. In Arizona, it's illegal for businesses to refuse to serve water to customers. Any restaurant or bar must provide free water if requested. This law makes sense given Arizona's desert climate. Dehydration is a real risk, so water access is legally required. Businesses cannot charge for tap water. They must provide it for free as a public health measure. In France, it's illegal to name a pig Napoleon. This law keeps coming up because it's so bizarre. But France also requires bakeries to always have bread available. The law states that bakeries cannot close on days when no other bakery in the area is open. Communities must have bread access. Bakeries coordinate schedules to ensure bread availability. The law protects bread access as a basic necessity. In Switzerland, every citizen must have access to a nuclear bunker. This isn't quite a business law, but it affects construction requirements. New buildings must include bunkers or contribute to public bunker construction. The requirement dates from Cold War civil defense preparations. Switzerland maintains enough bunker space for the entire population. Builders must comply with bunker requirements. In Denmark, when a baby is born, parents must choose a name from a pre-approved list of about 7,000 names or apply for special permission. This affects the baby naming industry, such as it is, and creates bureaucratic processes around naming. Parents who want unique names must petition the government. Many requests are denied. The law prevents parents from giving children ridiculous names, but it also limits personal freedom significantly. Chapter 11. Licensing requirements that go too far. Occupational licensing is meant to ensure competence in important professions, but some places require licenses for absurd occupations. In Louisiana, you need a license to arrange flowers professionally. Becoming a licensed florist requires passing exams and completing training. The Florist Licensing Board protects established florists from competition. Critics argue flower arranging doesn't require government oversight. The law has been challenged as restricting economic freedom unnecessarily. Supporters claim it ensures quality. In Tennessee, you need a license to be a paid shampooer. Washing hair for money requires government approval and training. The shampoo licensing requirement is part of broader cosmetology regulations, but requiring a license just to wash hair seems excessive. The law protects cosmetology schools and licensed professionals from competition. It also creates barriers to entry for simple jobs. In Washington, D.C., tour guides must be licensed. Showing tourists around the city for money requires passing tests and getting government approval. The law is meant to ensure tour guides provide accurate information. Critics argue it's unnecessary restriction of free speech and commerce. Licensed tour guides have sued to protect their monopoly. Unlicensed guides face fines for operating without permission. In Michigan, you need a license to be an authorized scrap metal dealer. Buying and selling scrap metal requires government approval. This law aims to prevent theft by tracking scrap metal sales. Stolen copper and other metals are sold to scrap dealers. The licensing requirement creates a paper trail, but it also restricts who can operate in the scrap metal business. In Texas, it's illegal to call yourself an interior designer without a license. Only licensed interior designers can use that title. Interior decorators don't need licenses, but interior designers do. The distinction is technical and confusing. The law protects licensed interior designers' professional status. Critics say it's unnecessary title protection. Chapter 12. Tax laws that make no sense. Tax laws are complicated everywhere, but some specific taxes are just bizarre. In England, there's a window tax history where buildings were taxed based on the number of windows. The tax was repealed long ago, but it left lasting effects. Many old buildings in England have bricked up windows. Owners blocked windows to avoid taxes. The window tax created perverse incentives against natural light and ventilation. It was eventually repealed as obviously stupid. But the architectural scars remain visible throughout England today. In Maryland, if you're a resident and own a boat, it's considered a taxable vehicle. Boats are taxed like cars. The boat tax treats watercraft as transportation vehicles subject to annual fees. Boat owners must register and pay taxes on their vessels, annually like car registration. In Alabama, there's a tax on playing cards. Decks of cards are taxed, with the revenue going to the state. The playing card tax generates minimal revenue, but remains on the books. Card manufacturers include the tax in their prices when selling in Alabama. In New York, bagels are taxed differently if they're sliced. Whole bagels aren't taxed, but sliced bagels are. The distinction is that sliced bagels are considered prepared food, which is taxable. Whole bagels are unprepared groceries, which aren't. Bagel shops navigate this rule carefully. The slicing determines the tax status. Customers can avoid tax by buying unsliced bagels and slicing them at home. In Tennessee, illegal drugs are taxable. People who possess illegal drugs are supposed to pay taxes on them. The law creates a tax stamp system for illegal substances. Dealers theoretically buy stamps to pay taxes on their illegal inventory. Obviously, drug dealers don't actually pay these taxes, but the law allows prosecution for tax evasion in addition to drug charges. Some people have been convicted of tax evasion on illegal drugs, even when drug charges were dropped. Part 6. Marriage, Relationships, and Family Laws. Chapter 13. When the government controls your love life. You'd think who you marry and how you conduct your relationships would be your own business, but governments around the world have passed laws that regulate romance, marriage, and family life in ways that range from protective to completely absurd. In Utah, it's illegal to marry your cousin unless both parties are over 65, or if over 55, can prove they cannot reproduce. This oddly specific age-based cousin marriage law has clear intentions but bizarre implementation. The reasoning is genetic. Preventing cousins from having children together reduces risks of genetic disorders. But why 65? At that age, reproduction is unlikely anyway. The law creates the strange scenario where cousin marriage is fine as long as you're old enough that children are improbable. Young cousins must wait decades or prove infertility. Other states ban cousin marriage entirely. Some allow it freely. Utah chose this peculiar middle ground. In France, you can marry a deceased person under extremely specific circumstances. Posthumous marriage requires presidential approval and proof that marriage was planned before death. This law was created for situations where a fiancé dies shortly before the wedding. If the surviving partner can prove they intended to marry and the president approves, a posthumous ceremony can occur. The surviving spouse gains some legal benefits, but not inheritance rights. It's mainly symbolic. Several posthumous marriages are approved each year in France. The practice seems morbid to outsiders but provides closure for some. In Saudi Arabia, women needed male guardian permission to marry until very recent reforms. Even adult women required father or brother approval for marriage. This law reflected extreme patriarchal control over women's lives. Women couldn't choose their own husbands without male family approval. Recent reforms have relaxed some guardianship requirements, but cultural practices often lag behind legal changes. The law prevented women from escaping abusive families through marriage without guardian consent. In China, there are restrictions on when couples can marry based on auspicious dates. While not strictly illegal to marry on unlucky dates, government offices may be closed, making it impossible. Chinese wedding industry revolves around lucky dates determined by traditional calendars. Everyone wants to marry on fortunate days. This creates booking nightmares. Popular lucky dates have limited appointment slots at government marriage offices. Some years have very few lucky dates, creating massive backlogs of couples waiting to marry. In Italy, couples must have a civil ceremony for their marriage to be legally valid, even if they also have a religious ceremony. Church weddings alone don't create legal marriages. This separation of church and state in marriage law means couples often have two ceremonies: civil for legal purposes, religious for spiritual ones. The civil ceremony is usually quick and bureaucratic. The religious ceremony is the celebration. Tourists sometimes don't understand this distinction and think a church wedding in Italy is legally binding. It's not. In Thailand, it's illegal to leave your house without wearing underwear. This law supposedly exists, though enforcement is unclear. The underwear requirement extends to being in public generally, not just leaving home. How this law is enforced is mysterious. Police don't conduct underwear checks. Prosecution would be difficult to prove. The law might be more urban legend than reality, or it might exist but be completely unenforced. In Kentucky, remarrying the same person 4 times is illegal. You can divorce and remarry the same person 3 times, but the 4th marriage to the same person is prohibited. This oddly specific law addresses people with turbulent relationships who repeatedly marry and divorce each other. Why 3 times is acceptable, but 4 is too many, is unclear. The law draws an arbitrary line. Enforcing this requires tracking marriage histories across jurisdictions, which is administratively challenging. In South Carolina, until 2019, you had to be 18 to get married without parental consent, but with parental consent, there was no minimum age. This created situations where very young children could be legally married. The law was changed after advocacy, highlighting that child marriage was still occurring in the United States. Before the change, children as young as 10 were married legally, with parental and judicial consent. The law now requires being at least 16 with parental consent, or 18 without, preventing the youngest marriages. Similar laws existed in many states. Gradual reforms have raised marriage ages, but some states still allow marriage under 18. In Bangladesh, marriage registration is not required by law, but unregistered marriages create legal complications for women's rights. Without registration, proving marriage for inheritance, custody, or divorce purposes becomes difficult. The law doesn't require registration, but practically women need it to protect their rights. This creates a situation where educated urban women register marriages, while rural women often don't. In Japan, women must wait 6 months after divorce before remarrying, while men face no such restriction. The law is meant to prevent paternity confusion. If a woman remarries immediately and becomes pregnant, there could be questions about which husband is the father. Modern DNA testing makes this rationale obsolete, but the law remains. The gender-based distinction is discriminatory. Men can remarry immediately without concern for paternity issues. Challenges to this law have been unsuccessful despite its obvious gender inequality. In Austria, adopted adults can marry their adoptive parents after the adoption is legally dissolved. This creates very uncomfortable legal scenarios. The law allows dissolving adoptions between consenting adults. Once dissolved, they're no longer legally related. This means a person could be adopted, grow up, dissolve the adoption, then marry their former adoptive parent. The law doesn't specifically authorize this, but it doesn't prevent it either. It's a loophole rather than intentional policy. Few people use this loophole, but its existence highlights how adoption and marriage laws can interact strangely. Chapter 14: Parenting and Child Rearing Laws. Governments regulate parenting through laws meant to protect children, but some regulations go beyond protection into micromanagement of family life. In Germany, homeschooling is illegal. All children must attend government-approved schools. Parents cannot educate children at home. The law dates back to efforts to ensure all children receive standardized education and socialization. Families have fled Germany to countries allowing homeschooling. Some have faced prosecution and had children removed. Germany considers homeschooling harmful to children's social development and national cohesion. The law is controversial internationally, with homeschooling advocates calling it authoritarian. In Sweden, parents cannot spank or physically punish children at all. Sweden banned corporal punishment in 1979, the first country to do so. The law makes any physical punishment of children illegal, including spanking. Parents who spank children can be prosecuted for assault. The law treats children's bodily autonomy seriously. Sweden believes physical punishment is harmful and unnecessary. The law reflects cultural values about child rearing. Many countries have followed Sweden's example, but others maintain parental rights to physical discipline. In Denmark, parents choosing non-approved names for children must get government permission, as mentioned earlier. The name approval process exists in several Scandinavian countries. Parents must justify unusual names. Rejected names include Pluto, Monkey, Anus, and various other names deemed harmful to children. The government maintains a list of pre-approved names. Choosing from the list is easy, but creative naming requires bureaucratic approval. Critics argue this violates parental freedom. Supporters say it protects children from embarrassing names. In China, the one-child policy, now relaxed to allow 3 children, created complex regulations about family size. For decades, couples could only have 1 child without facing fines, job loss, or forced abortions. The policy created demographic problems: aging population, gender imbalance from sex-selective abortions. Enforcement varied by region and ethnicity. Urban Han Chinese faced strict limits, while rural families and minorities had more flexibility. The policy was relaxed to 2 children in 2016, then 3 in 2021, as China faces demographic crisis. The generational impact of these regulations will affect Chinese society for decades. In France, parents cannot name children anything that might harm their interests. Judges can reject names deemed inappropriate. French courts have rejected names like Nutella, Strawberry, and Manhattan. The law gives judges discretion to protect children from names that could cause mockery or harm. Parents can appeal rejections, but judges usually maintain decisions on clearly problematic names. The law balances parental freedom with child welfare, but where to draw the line is subjective. In Japan, children with Japanese parents must take the father's surname. Married couples must share a surname, and in practice, this is almost always the husband's. Women who want to keep their birth names cannot do so legally after marriage if they have children. This law reflects traditional patriarchal family structures. Challenges to this law have failed in courts, which maintain it's constitutional. Many Japanese women use their birth names professionally, but legally have their husband's surname. The law creates administrative complications and is increasingly unpopular among younger generations. In Iceland, both parents must be present at the birth registration, and the child must have an Icelandic name or get approval for foreign names. The name must be compatible with Icelandic grammar and use Icelandic letters only. Foreign names or names with non-Icelandic letters require special approval. This protects Icelandic language purity, but restricts immigrant families' naming choices. The law ensures all names can be properly declined in Icelandic grammar cases. Part 7. Technology and Modern Life Laws. Chapter 15. When old legal systems meet new technology. Technology has evolved faster than laws in many places, creating bizarre situations where regulations written for different eras apply to modern life in absurd ways. In the UK, it's illegal to use a television without a license. TV licenses fund the BBC and are required for all households with TVs. The law was written when TVs were new. Today, with streaming and internet, the TV license system is outdated. You need a license, even if you only watch streaming services. The definition of watching live TV includes internet streams. Enforcement involves detector vans supposedly identifying unlicensed TVS, though their effectiveness is disputed. People who don't pay face fines and prosecution. Thousands are prosecuted annually for TV license violations. In Germany, everyone must pay a broadcasting fee, regardless of whether they own a TV or radio. The fee funds public broadcasting. Even people who don't watch TV or listen to radio must pay. The fee is per household, not per device. The law changed from device-based fees to universal fees to prevent evasion. Enforcement is strict. People who don't pay face escalating fines and potential criminal prosecution. The system is controversial. People who don't use public broadcasting resent mandatory fees. In Switzerland, it's illegal to flush the toilet after 10 p.m. in apartments, mentioned earlier, and Switzerland also regulates online behavior. Some cantons have laws about cyberbullying and online harassment that are more restrictive than other countries. Switzerland takes digital privacy seriously. Laws protect personal data and online activity, but some regulations extend to restricting certain online speech and behavior beyond what other democracies allow. The Swiss balance privacy protection with free speech differently than the US or UK. In South Korea, online gaming by minors is regulated by law. Children under 16 are blocked from gaming between midnight and 6 a.m. The Cinderella Law, or shutdown law, forces game companies to prevent minors from playing late at night. The law was created to address gaming addiction among youth. Enforcement requires age verification systems in games. Companies face penalties for non-compliance. The law is controversial. Parents argue they should control children's gaming, not the government. Effectiveness is debated. Tech-savvy kids find workarounds, and the law may drive them to unregulated platforms. In China, internet use is heavily regulated through the Great Firewall and various laws controlling online behavior. Social media posts critical of government can result in arrest. Sharing VPN software is illegal. The regulations create a parallel internet where Chinese users access different content than the rest of the world. Companies must comply with censorship demands. Foreign platforms either comply or are blocked. The system of internet control is comprehensive and actively enforced. Citizens have been arrested for online comments, sharing information, or accessing blocked sites. In Australia, violent video games are heavily restricted. Australia's rating system refused to rate extremely violent games until 2013. Games without ratings cannot be sold. This effectively banned many popular violent games. The system was created when games were considered children's entertainment. Even after allowing R-rated games, Australia bans some games available elsewhere. Importing banned games is illegal. Customs can seize them. The laws reflect Australia's conservative approach to media violence. In Japan, taking pictures of people in public without consent can violate privacy laws in some contexts. Street photography is restricted compared to countries with stronger free press protections. The law balances privacy rights against documentation and journalism. Tourists taking photos in public sometimes violate these laws unknowingly. Context matters. Journalistic photography has more protection than random picture taking. The law reflects Japanese cultural values about privacy and public behavior. In France, employers cannot contact employees outside working hours. The right to disconnect law protects workers from constant availability. Companies with over 50 employees must establish hours when workers are not required to respond to emails or calls. The law recognizes that constant connectivity harms work-life balance. Enforcement is through labor law mechanisms. Companies violating workers' disconnect rights face penalties. The law is popular with workers, but creates complications for global companies operating across time zones. Other countries are considering similar laws as remote work blurs work-home boundaries. Chapter 16. Social Media and Internet Speech. Laws to social media has created new legal challenges worldwide. Different countries regulate online speech very differently. In Germany, the NetzDG law requires social media platforms to remove illegal content within 24 hours or face massive fines. The law targets hate speech, misinformation, and other illegal content. Platforms must establish reporting systems and respond quickly to complaints. Fines for non-compliance can reach millions of euros. Critics worry the law encourages over-removal of content to avoid penalties. The law affects how platforms moderate German users globally. In Singapore, the fake news law allows government to order removal of content deemed false. The Protection from Online Falsehoods and Manipulation Act gives broad powers to determine truth. Government ministers can order corrections or removals without court proceedings. Critics call it censorship. The government claims it protects against misinformation. Several orders have been issued against news sites, bloggers, and social media users. The law criminalizes spreading falsehoods that harm public interest. In Turkey, insulting the president online is illegal. Thousands have been prosecuted under this law. Social media posts critical of the president can result in arrest and imprisonment. The law is used to silence dissent and criticism. Even jokes or satirical content have led to prosecutions. International organizations criticize the law as authoritarian censorship. Turkey defends it as protecting national dignity and preventing defamation. In Thailand, lèse majesté laws criminalize insulting the monarchy. These laws extend to online speech. Sharing, liking, or commenting on content deemed insulting to the royal family is illegal. Penalties include years in prison. The laws are actively enforced online. People have been prosecuted for Facebook posts, tweets, and YouTube videos. The laws are among the strictest royal defamation laws globally. Critics call them excessive. Supporters say they protect respected institutions. In Russia, laws against gay propaganda criminalize positive portrayals of LGBTQ plus content online or in media accessible to minors. The vague law criminalizes any content presenting non-heterosexual relationships as normal. Websites, social media posts, and media content can violate the law. Enforcement targets activists, educators, and content creators. International human rights organizations condemn the law as discriminatory. Russia maintains it protects children from harmful influences. In the United Arab Emirates, cybercrime laws criminalize online insults, mockery, or content that damages reputation. Posting insulting content about someone online can result in fines and imprisonment. The laws apply to residents and visitors. Tourists have been arrested for social media posts. Even posts made outside the UAE can be prosecuted if they involve UAE residents. The laws reflect cultural values about honor and reputation. Critics say they're used to silence legitimate criticism. Part 8. Environmental and Property Laws. Chapter 17. Bizarre rules about your home. And property rights seem straightforward. You own something, you control it. But laws around the world restrict property use in surprising ways. In Colorado, it's illegal to collect rainwater without specific permits. Rainwater collection was restricted because water rights are complex. The law was based on the idea that rain falling on your property continues downstream and belongs to others with water rights. Recent reforms have relaxed restrictions, allowing limited rainwater collection, but historically, catching rain in a barrel on your own property was illegal in Colorado. The law created absurd situations where people couldn't use rain falling on their own roofs. In Switzerland, hanging laundry on Sundays is illegal in some areas. Sunday is a day of rest, and visible laundry is considered inappropriate. The law reflects Swiss cultural values about Sunday, quiet, and respectability. Enforcement varies, but neighbors may complain about Sunday laundry. The restriction extends to other noisy or visible activities on Sundays. Swiss Sunday laws are comprehensive, covering lawn mowing, car washing, and various household tasks. In the UK, you can be prosecuted for not having a TV license, even if you only watch streaming services. The TV license requirement extends to iPlayer and live streaming. Watching any live broadcast without a license is illegal. The law was written for traditional TV, but has been expanded to cover internet streaming. enforcement involves mailings, detector vans of disputed effectiveness, and prosecution. Thousands of people are prosecuted annually for TV license violations. In Singapore, not flushing public toilets is illegal. Signs in restrooms remind users that flushing is required by law. Random enforcement officers check public restrooms. Violators can be fined. The law promotes cleanliness and hygiene. Singapore takes public cleanliness seriously, with various laws enforcing it. The flush law is just one of many regulations about public behavior. In Denmark, houses must be painted in government-approved colors in some historic areas. The regulations preserve aesthetic harmony in historic neighborhoods. Homeowners must get approval for exterior paint colors. The approved palette is limited to historically appropriate colors. Violations result in orders to repaint in acceptable colors. The law protects architectural heritage, but restricts personal choice. In Japan, property inheritance laws sometimes result in hundreds of distant relatives co-owning land parcels. When someone dies without a clear will, property divides among all relatives. Over generations, a single property might have 50-plus co-owners. Selling or developing such properties requires unanimous consent from all co-owners. Many properties become effectively unusable because gathering all owners is impossible. The problem has created abandoned properties throughout Japan. In France, renovating historic building facades requires architect approval and historic preservation oversight. Buildings in historic districts have protected status. Owners must maintain exteriors in historically accurate ways. Renovations must use approved materials and designs. The process is expensive and time-consuming. The laws preserve French architectural heritage, but burden owners. Chapter 18. Laws about your yard and garden. Even your own yard isn't free from bizarre legal requirements in many places. In Florida, you can be fined for having brown grass. Homeowners associations in some cities require maintained lawns. During droughts, homeowners face choosing between water restrictions and brown lawn fines. The laws prioritize appearance over water conservation. Enforcement varies, but HOAs actively fine homeowners for lawn violations. In Tennessee, sharing homegrown vegetables with neighbors can violate cottage food laws in some interpretations. Laws regulating food sales are written broadly enough to potentially cover giving away produce. The laws are meant to ensure food safety, but can be read to prohibit neighbor-to-neighbor sharing. Enforcement is rare, but technically sharing garden vegetables could violate regulations. The laws highlight how food safety regulations can overreach. In the UK, picking wildflowers in public spaces is illegal under the Wildlife and Countryside Act. The law protects wild plant species from overpicking. Taking flowers, even common ones, from parks or roadsides violates the law. Enforcement is minimal for common species, but rare plant picking is prosecuted. The law reflects UK commitment to conservation. In California, some cities restrict front yard vegetable gardens. Ornamental plants are required in visible areas. The laws prioritize aesthetics over food production. Homeowners who want front yard gardens face restrictions. Some cities have relaxed these laws amid drought and sustainability concerns. The regulations reflect suburban aesthetic values over practical food growing. In Switzerland, urban beekeeping requires registration and following strict regulations. Beehives must be registered. Keepers must maintain disease prevention measures. The laws protect commercial beekeeping and prevent disease spread. Regulations specify hive placement, distances from property lines, and management practices. Switzerland takes beekeeping seriously as both hobby and agricultural practice. In Australia, removing trees on private property requires permits in many areas. The laws protect tree canopy and prevent excessive clearing. Property owners must justify tree removal and get approval. Violations result in fines and requirements to replant. The laws balance property rights against environmental protection. Conclusion. So there you have it. We've traveled the world exploring laws that range from head-scratching to absolutely insane. From flushing toilets after 10 p.m. in Switzerland to handling salmon suspiciously in the UK, from naming pigs Napoleon in France to walking dogs exactly 3 times per day in Italy. These aren't ancient laws from dusty books that nobody remembers. These are regulations that exist right now, today in modern countries. Some are actively enforced. Others sit on the books, waiting for the one person unlucky enough to violate them. All of them represent moments when lawmakers decided that certain behaviors needed legal regulation. What's fascinating is seeing the patterns. Many food laws protect local culinary traditions or industries. Naming laws reflect cultural values about protecting children. Animal welfare laws show different societies' relationships with pets and wildlife. Technology laws reveal how legal systems struggle to adapt to changes they never anticipated. Some of these laws made sense when they were created. The Alabama ice cream in back pocket law actually addressed horse theft. The Swiss toilet flushing law responds to real noise concerns in apartments with thin walls. The UK TV license funds public broadcasting, but many laws persist long after their original purpose disappeared. They remain because removing them would require legislative effort, and politicians have better things to do than repeal obsolete laws about camels on highways or whaling in landlocked states. Others were bizarre from the start. Did Oklahoma really need to ban bear wrestling? Was suspicious salmon handling enough of a problem to require specific legislation? Who was fighting bears and why? These laws teach us something important about how legal systems work. Laws accumulate. They reflect the specific concerns of their times. They're influenced by cultural values, lobbying interests, and occasionally someone doing something so weird that legislators feel compelled to ban it specifically. They also show that no country has a monopoly on legal absurdity. We've seen weird laws from every continent, from established democracies and developing nations alike. The UK, with its centuries of legal tradition, prohibits dying in Parliament. Switzerland, known for efficiency and order, regulates guinea pig ownership. Singapore, a modern economic powerhouse, bans chewing gum. The strangest thing, most of these laws will probably never be repealed. They'll sit in legal codes for decades or centuries, occasional curiosities that make people laugh and wonder what possibly led to their creation. So the next time you think you understand your country's legal system, remember, somewhere there's probably a law prohibiting something so specific and bizarre that you'd never imagine anyone needed to ban it. You might even be violating one right now without knowing it. Are you wearing pants in France as a woman? Technically illegal without permission. Flushing your toilet after 10 p.m. in Switzerland. That's a fine. Carrying an ice cream cone in your back pocket in Alabama. Believe it or not, criminal. The law is stranger than we think. And in most cases, it's going to stay that way. Thanks for joining me on this tour of the world's most bizarre legal requirements. If you enjoyed this deep dive into legal absurdity, hit that like button. Subscribe for more fascinating looks at the weird side of history and modern life. And let me know in the comments which law you found most ridiculous. And remember, just because something seems too weird to be illegal doesn't mean it isn't. Check your local laws before you flush that toilet, name that pig, or handle that salmon suspiciously. You never know what might land you in legal trouble. Until next time, stay curious, stay lawful, or at least mostly lawful, and stay grateful that wherever you live, someone somewhere has it legally weirder. Part 9. Workplace and Employment Laws. Chapter 19. When your job has ridiculous legal requirements. The workplace is where most adults spend the majority of their waking hours, so naturally governments have created countless laws to regulate employment. Some make perfect sense. Safety regulations, minimum wage, anti-discrimination protections. Others are completely baffling. In France, it's illegal to call your employees after work hours unless it's an emergency. The right to disconnect law went into effect in 2017. giving workers legal protection from the constant connectivity of modern work life. Companies with more than 50 employees must establish hours when staff are not expected to answer emails, texts, or phone calls. Violating an employee's right to disconnect can result in legal action and fines. The law recognizes that smartphones and laptops have blurred the line between work and personal time. Before this regulation, French workers reported feeling pressured to respond to work communications at all hours. Other countries are watching France's experiment closely. Some are considering similar laws. The regulation has been popular with workers, but has created complications for companies operating globally across different time zones. Imagine being a manager in Paris needing to coordinate with your New York office. Your New York colleagues are just starting their workday when your French employees have legally protected evening hours. The law forces companies to rethink how they schedule international communication. In Japan, companies can be fined if their employees work too much overtime. The government has implemented karoshi prevention laws, karoshi meaning death from overwork. Japan has a notorious work culture where employees routinely work 60, 70, or even 80-hour weeks. People literally die from overwork-related stress, heart attacks, and strokes. The new laws cap overtime hours and require companies to monitor employee work time closely. Companies that allow excessive overtime face penalties, but enforcement is challenging. Many Japanese workers feel cultural pressure to work long hours regardless of legal limits. They may clock out but continue working, or they may underreport their actual hours. The laws are trying to change deep cultural norms about work, which is far more difficult than simply passing regulations. In Sweden, employees are entitled to fika breaks, coffee breaks, where workers socialize. While not legally mandated, fika is so culturally important that employers who don't allow it face backlash. Fika isn't just a coffee break. It's a social institution where colleagues gather, have coffee and pastries, and talk about non-work topics. It happens twice daily in many Swedish workplaces. Companies that try to eliminate fika or pressure employees to skip it discover that Swedish workers take this tradition seriously. Productivity actually increases when fika is respected. The practice reflects Swedish values about work-life balance and workplace community. Work is important, but so are relationships with colleagues. In Germany, work emails sent on weekends can be considered a violation of rest period laws. Some German companies have implemented systems that delay weekend emails until Monday. The laws recognize that receiving work emails on weekends, even if you don't respond, creates stress and prevents proper rest. Daimler famously created an email system that automatically deletes emails sent to employees on vacation, with an auto reply telling senders to contact someone else or resend after the vacation ends. The system prevents the dreaded return from vacation to thousands of emails. It enforces the idea that vacation means actual disconnection from work. In Brazil, employees are entitled to a 30-day vacation annually. Employers cannot require employees to take less time, and vacations must be taken within 12 months of earning them. Brazilian labor law is very protective of workers. The 30-day vacation is mandatory, not optional. Employers who don't provide it face legal penalties. Additionally, employers must pay a vacation bonus equivalent to 1/3 of the employee's monthly salary. This ensures employees can actually afford to take vacation. The law reflects Brazilian values about leisure and family time. Work is necessary, but extended rest periods are considered essential for well-being. In Spain, the siesta tradition is slowly disappearing, but some regions still have laws affecting business hours during midday. Traditional Spanish schedules included long lunch breaks when people would go home, eat, and nap. Businesses closed from roughly 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Modern economic pressures have reduced siesta prevalence, but some Spanish regions maintain regulations about business hours that reflect this tradition. Tourists are sometimes surprised to find shops closed in the middle of the afternoon, only to reopen in early evening and stay open until 9 or 10 p.m. In South Korea, employers must provide employees with at least 1 hour of refreshment time per week for activities like exercise, cultural events, or rest. The law recognizes that employee well-being requires more than just avoiding overwork. Active rest and enrichment activities are legally protected. Companies provide gyms, organize cultural trips, or allow employees time for hobbies during work hours. The regulation represents a shift in Korean workplace culture, which has historically been as demanding as Japan's. In Austria, employees are entitled to a 13th and 14th month salary. These bonus payments are required by law. The 13th month payment comes before summer vacation. The 14th month payment comes before Christmas. Both are equivalent to a full month's salary. This effectively means Austrian workers receive 14 months of pay for 12 months of work. The bonus months are taxed at lower rates than regular salary. The system has existed for decades and is deeply embedded in Austrian employment expectations. Chapter 20: Unemployment and Job Search Regulations. Even when you're not working, some countries have laws about how you search for work and conduct yourself while unemployed. In Germany, unemployed people receiving benefits must accept any job offer deemed suitable, even if it's outside their field or below their qualifications. The law is meant to prevent people from refusing jobs while collecting unemployment, but suitable is interpreted broadly. Someone with a PhD might be required to accept warehouse work. A former executive might have to take an entry-level position. Refusing a suitable job offer results in benefit cuts or termination. The system prioritizes getting people employed over matching skills to positions. In Denmark, unemployment benefits are generous, but come with strict requirements. Recipients must apply to at least 2 jobs per week and provide documentation. The Danish system provides support, but expects active job searching. Caseworkers monitor compliance closely. Recipients who don't meet application quotas face benefit reductions. The system balances support with accountability. Denmark also requires unemployed people to participate in training programs or education if they haven't found work after a certain period. In Switzerland, unemployed people must prove they're searching for work by documenting applications and interviews. The Swiss unemployment system requires monthly reports showing job search efforts. Simply collecting benefits without active searching isn't allowed. Caseworkers review applications and can require proof of contact with potential employers. People who don't demonstrate sufficient effort face benefit suspensions until they comply. In the UK, universal credit recipients must agree to a claimant commitment specifying job search activities. The commitment details how many hours per week must be spent searching, how many applications to submit, and what activities count as job seeking. Failure to meet commitment requirements results in sanctions, benefit reductions, or suspensions. The system has been controversial. Critics argue it's punitive and doesn't account for individual circumstances. Supporters claim it promotes personal responsibility. In Australia, job seekers receiving benefits must use the government's job search website and apply through it. The system tracks applications automatically. Job seekers must meet minimum application numbers per month. Employers know that some applications come from people required to apply rather than genuinely interested candidates. The system creates a lot of low-quality applications that waste everyone's time but satisfy bureaucratic requirements. Part 10: Education and Student Life Laws. Chapter 21: School Rules. Enforced by law. Education regulations exist everywhere, but some places have turned school rules into actual legal requirements with surprising consequences. In the Netherlands, students can be fined for skipping school. Truancy isn't just a school discipline issue, it's a legal matter. Parents of truant students receive fines that increase with repeated violations. The fines can reach hundreds of euros. Schools report truancy to authorities who investigate and issue penalties. The system treats education as a legal obligation, not just a parental responsibility. Students who skip school can also be stopped by truancy officers who patrol during school hours, checking that young people are where they should be. In Japan, students are legally required to clean their schools. Janitors clean major areas, but students clean classrooms, hallways, and bathrooms daily. This isn't a school policy that could be changed. It's embedded in education law. Schools must incorporate cleaning into student routines. The practice teaches responsibility and respect for shared spaces. Japanese students learn that maintaining cleanliness is everyone's job. Foreign students in Japan are sometimes shocked to find themselves scrubbing toilets as part of school. But for Japanese students, it's completely normal. In South Korea, students must attend school and private tutoring academies, hagwons, that are legally regulated. Hagwons must register with the government and follow regulations about hours and curriculum. These after-school academies are a massive industry. Some regions have laws about how late hagwons can operate to prevent students from studying until midnight. The regulations recognize that private tutoring is essentially part of the education system, so it needs oversight like schools. In France, students cannot bring religious symbols to public schools. The law bans conspicuous religious symbols. This includes headscarves for Muslim girls, large crosses for Christians, and yarmulkes for Jewish boys. The law reflects French secularism, laïcité, which requires strict separation of religion and state institutions. The ban is controversial. Supporters say it ensures neutrality. Critics argue it discriminates against religions with visible practices. Enforcement involves teachers identifying prohibited items and requiring students to remove them or go home. In Germany, homeschooling is illegal, as mentioned earlier. This extends to requiring school attendance by law, with legal penalties for violations. Parents who attempt to homeschool can be fined, have children removed from their custody, or even face criminal charges. The law dates to efforts ensuring all children receive standardized education and don't grow up isolated from society. Some religious families have fled Germany to countries allowing homeschooling. The European Court of Human Rights has upheld Germany's ban. In Singapore, students must sing the national anthem and recite the national pledge at school assemblies. This is required by education regulations. The practice instills national identity and patriotism. Students learn the pledge in primary school and recite it throughout their education. Failure to participate can result in discipline. The regulations treat patriotic observances as mandatory parts of education. In China, students must take political education classes teaching Communist Party ideology. These are required subjects with examinations. Political education isn't optional or supplementary. It's core curriculum at all education levels. Students must demonstrate understanding of party principles to advance academically. The system ensures ideological conformity and political education from young ages. Chapter 22. University and Higher Education Regulations. Higher education has its own set of bizarre legal requirements in various countries. In South Korea, universities cannot hold classes past certain hours. The law limits university operating hours to prevent overwork. Korean students are famous for studying extreme hours. The regulations try to enforce some limits. Libraries and study areas also have regulated hours, though enforcement is inconsistent. The law recognizes that students will study long hours if allowed, so institutions must create boundaries. In Norway, university education is free for all students, including internationals. This is legally guaranteed. Norwegian law treats higher education as a public good that should be freely accessible. Even students from other countries pay no tuition. The policy is funded through taxes. Norwegians accept high taxes, partly because they provide benefits like free university. Some foreign students attend Norwegian universities, specifically for free education, then return home after graduating. In the United States, federal student loan programs have complex legal requirements about degree programs, completion rates, and employment outcomes. For-profit universities face particular scrutiny. Programs that leave students with debt, but poor job prospects, can lose federal funding eligibility. The regulations try to prevent predatory education institutions from taking student loan money while providing worthless degrees. Enforcement involves tracking graduate outcomes, debt levels, and employment rates. In Australia, universities must report international student attendance to immigration authorities. Student visas require maintaining enrollment and attendance. Universities that don't report violations face penalties. The system prevents visa fraud, where people claim student status but don't actually attend classes. International students who miss too many classes can have visas canceled and face deportation. In the UK, universities cannot charge domestic students more than legally capped tuition amounts. The cap adjusts periodically, but limits what universities can charge UK residents. International students face no cap and pay much higher fees, effectively subsidizing domestic students. The system keeps higher education accessible to UK residents while allowing universities to charge market rates to international students. Part 11. Religious and Cultural Practice. Laws Chapter 23. When religion and law intersect. Strangely, freedom of religion is protected in most democracies, but various countries have created laws regulating religious practices that range from protective to bizarre. In France, wearing the burqa or niqab, full face veils, in public is illegal. The law bans face coverings in public spaces. The ban applies to any face covering, but it primarily affects Muslim women wearing religious veils. Police can fine women wearing prohibited coverings and require them to remove veils or leave public areas. The law has been upheld by European courts despite religious freedom concerns. France argues it's about security and public order, not targeting religion. In Switzerland, building new minarets on mosques is illegal. The 2009 referendum banned minaret construction. Existing minarets remain, but new mosques cannot include these traditional Islamic architectural features. The ban passed despite government opposition. It reflected public concerns about Muslim immigration and integration. International human rights groups criticized the ban as discriminatory. Switzerland defended it as a cultural preservation measure. In Denmark, religious slaughter methods, halal and kosher, face restrictions. Animals must be stunned before slaughter, which some religious methods prohibit. The law prioritizes animal welfare over religious accommodation. Denmark is willing to restrict religious practices if they conflict with animal protection standards. Muslim and Jewish communities have protested the restrictions. Denmark maintains that animal welfare law applies equally regardless of religious claims. Some religious communities import meat from countries allowing religious slaughter rather than compromised practices. In India, cow slaughter is banned in many states. Cows are sacred in Hinduism, and laws reflect religious values of the majority population. People caught slaughtering or eating beef face serious penalties, including imprisonment. The laws create conflict with Muslim and Christian minorities who have no religious prohibitions against beef. Enforcement varies by region. Some states strictly enforce bans, while others are more permissive. In Indonesia, atheism is effectively illegal. Citizens must identify with one of 6 recognized religions. Atheists cannot officially register their belief status. Government documents require religious identification. People who publicly advocate atheism face social persecution and potential legal consequences. The requirement reflects Indonesia's religious culture, where atheism is viewed with suspicion and hostility. In Saudi Arabia, practicing non-Islamic religions publicly is prohibited. Non-Muslims can worship privately, but not publicly. Churches, temples, and other non-Islamic religious buildings are illegal. Religious services must occur in private residences. Importing religious materials, like Bibles, can be restricted. Proselytizing non-Islamic religions is a serious offense. The laws reflect Saudi Arabia's position as guardian of Islam's holiest sites and its official religious character. In Iran, converting from Islam to another religion is technically punishable by death. Apostasy laws remain on the books. Enforcement is inconsistent. Some converts live openly while others face persecution. The law reflects Islamic legal traditions about apostasy. Modern application varies with political climate. Christians, Baha'is, and others face particular discrimination. The laws create fear and restrict religious freedom severely. Chapter 24: Holiday and Festival Regulations. Government regulations even extend to how people can celebrate holidays and festivals. In Scotland, January 2nd is a bank holiday, specifically because January 1st hangovers are expected. The extra day off is built into law. Scotland takes Hogmanay, New Year, celebrations seriously. The two-day holiday recognizes that people will be recovering. The legal holiday acknowledges cultural reality rather than pretending people won't overindulge. Businesses close, giving everyone time to recover from New Year festivities. In Germany, quiet hours extend to Sundays and holidays. Making noise on these days violates legal rest periods. You cannot mow lawns, drill holes, or do other noisy activities on Sundays or public holidays. Neighbors can call police for violations. Fines are issued for disturbing Sunday quiet. The regulations reflect German values about rest and community consideration. In China, Spring Festival creates the world's largest annual human migration as workers travel home. Laws require employers to provide time off and travel allowances. Hundreds of millions of people travel during Spring Festival. Transportation systems are overwhelmed. Employers must give workers time off and often provide travel subsidies. The legal requirements recognize Spring Festival's cultural importance. Workers who must work during holidays receive triple pay. The premium pay is legally mandated. In Spain, throwing tomatoes at people is legal 1 day per year during La Tomatina festival. Otherwise, it would be assault. The festival in Buñol involves massive tomato fights. Tens of thousands of people throw tons of tomatoes at each other. Local regulations specifically permit this behavior during the festival. Any other time, throwing tomatoes at people would be illegal. The festival generates tourism revenue, so regulations enable rather than restrict it. In Thailand, celebrating Songkran, water festival, involves throwing water at people for several days. This would normally be assault, but is legally sanctioned. During Songkran, throwing water is not only legal, but expected. Everyone participates. Regulations exist about safety. Not throwing iced water, not throwing at motorcyclists in dangerous ways. The legal framework accommodates traditional practices while adding modern safety concerns. Part 12. Miscellaneous Weird Laws. Chapter 25. Laws that defy categorization. Some laws are so specific and bizarre that they don't fit into any broader category. They exist in their own special realm of legal weirdness. In Alabama, it's illegal to wear a fake mustache in church that causes laughter. This incredibly specific law targets disruptive disguises in religious settings. Why mustaches specifically? Why only fake ones? Why only if they cause laughter? The law's origins are lost to history, but it remains technically enforceable. Imagine being prosecuted for mustache-related church disruption. The specificity is baffling. In Vermont, women must get written permission from their husbands to wear false teeth. This archaic law was never repealed. The law dates to an era when wives needed husband permission for many things. It's obviously not enforced today, but technically Vermont law still contains this requirement. No one has bothered to officially remove it. The law stands as a reminder of how recently women lacked basic autonomy. In Arizona, donkeys cannot sleep in bathtubs. This law has a real origin story involving a donkey, a bathtub, and a flood. A merchant's donkey fell asleep in a bathtub. When the town flooded, the bathtub floated down Main Street with the sleeping donkey inside. The spectacle was apparently so problematic that Arizona passed a law preventing future bathtub donkey incidents. The law remains on the books decades after the incident. In Oklahoma, Making ugly faces at a dog can get you fined or jailed. The law prohibits provoking animals through facial expressions. How ugly does a face need to be to violate this law? That's subjective. The law presumably aims to prevent animal harassment, but the facial expression focus is odd. Enforcement would require proving someone intentionally made ugly faces, specifically at a dog. In Louisiana, it's illegal to gargle in public. This prohibition on a specific sound-making activity seems arbitrary. Why gargling specifically? Was public gargling a problem Louisiana faced? The law might relate to public health concerns from spitting, but why specify gargling? Enforcement is presumably non-existent, but the law exists. In Minnesota, it's illegal to stand around any building without a lawful purpose. Loitering laws exist many places, but Minnesota's is particularly vague. What constitutes a lawful purpose for standing? The law gives police broad discretion. Critics argue it enables harassment of homeless people and minorities. Supporters claim it prevents suspicious behavior and crime. In New Jersey, it's illegal to frown at a police officer. The law prohibits making faces or gestures at officers. Frowning could theoretically violate this law. Smiling is apparently required when interacting with police. The law is meant to prevent disrespect toward officers, but criminalizing facial expressions seems extreme. Enforcement would require police subjectively determining if a frown is hostile or just natural expression. In Iowa, a one-armed piano player must perform for free. This bizarre law supposedly exists, though verification is difficult. Why one-armed players specifically? Why must they perform free? The law's origin and purpose are complete mysteries if it actually exists. It might be urban legend rather than real law, but it appears in weird law compilations. In Florida, unmarried women who parachute on Sundays can be jailed. This incredibly specific prohibition combines multiple arbitrary restrictions. Married women parachuting on Sunday are fine. Unmarried women parachuting on weekdays are fine. But unmarried women parachuting specifically on Sundays violates this law. The law has never been enforced in modern times and likely dates to outdated moral regulations. The combination of factors, gender, marital status, activity, and day, is remarkably specific. Chapter 26, Laws that almost make sense but don't quite. Some laws have logical intentions, but bizarre implementations that make you question the lawmaking process. In Canada, it's illegal to pay for items in all coins if the amount exceeds certain limits. You cannot use unlimited coins for purchases. The law limits coins to prevent people paying large amounts in pennies or nickels as protest or annoyance. Specific limits exist. Pennies up to 25 cents, nickels up to $5, quarters up to $40. Beyond these amounts, merchants can refuse coin payment. The law protects businesses from coin-based harassment. In Australia, taxis must carry a bale of hay in the trunk. This law dates to horse and buggy days and was never updated. The requirement made sense when taxis were horse-drawn carriages. The hay fed the horses. Modern taxis don't have horses, but the law technically remains. No one enforces it, but it's still on the books. Updating old laws requires legislative effort, so outdated requirements often persist indefinitely. In the UK, all beached whales and sturgeon are property of the Queen. This medieval law still exists. Whales and sturgeon are royal fish. If one washes ashore, it technically belongs to the monarchy. The law is rarely invoked, but it could be. Dead whales on beaches are legally the Queen's property. The law dates to when these valuable fish were considered worthy of royal claim. In Denmark, you must check under your car for sleeping children before starting the engine. This law addresses a real problem. Small children sometimes crawl under parked cars to sleep or play. Starting the car without checking could be tragic. The law requires a visual check before starting your vehicle. Most people don't strictly follow this, but the law exists to prevent horrible accidents. In Switzerland, you cannot recycle on Sundays. Bottle banks and recycling centers are off limits. The noise from recycling violates Sunday quiet regulations. Glass bottles clanking is considered disruptive. People must wait until weekdays to recycle. Sunday recycling violates community peace. The law reflects Swiss priorities. Environmental responsibility is important, but Sunday rest is more important. Part 13. Laws about death and funerals. Chapter 27. When even dying has ridiculous rules. You'd think death would be the one area where bureaucracy leaves you alone. You'd be wrong. Countries around the world have created bizarre laws about dying, funerals, and what happens to your body afterward. In London, it's illegal to die in the House of Parliament. As mentioned earlier, this law exists because anyone who dies in Parliament is technically entitled to a state funeral. The government doesn't want to provide state funerals for random people who happen to have medical emergencies in the building. So dying, there is prohibited. Of course, you can't actually control when you die. The law is impossible to comply with intentionally. If someone does have a fatal medical event in Parliament, they're officially recorded as dying in the ambulance or at the hospital. The parliamentary medical staff presumably work very hard to stabilize anyone having a medical crisis long enough to get them outside the building. Imagine being a paramedic, whose job includes preventing people from technically dying in the wrong location. In Texas, it's illegal to shoot a buffalo from a second-story hotel window. This incredibly specific prohibition suggests a very particular historical incident. Why second story specifically? Ground floor buffalo shooting is apparently fine. Third floor, also acceptable. But that second story is where Texas draws the line. The law presumably dates to the Wild West era when buffalo hunting was common, and hotels were often the tallest buildings in town. Someone shot a buffalo. From a second-story window, it created problems, and Texas legislators got specific. The law remains on the books, even though buffalo hunting from hotels is no longer a pressing concern in modern Texas. In England and Wales, anyone over the age of 10 can be held criminally responsible for their actions. But there's a strange exception. You cannot be convicted of dying by suicide. Historically, suicide was illegal in the UK. It was decriminalized in 1961, but the law specifically states that suicide cannot be prosecuted. This creates the odd situation of a law, saying you cannot be convicted of something that's no longer illegal anyway. The distinction matters for insurance and inheritance purposes. If suicide were still criminal, life insurance policies could refuse to pay, and estates could be affected. The explicit decriminalization protects families. In Utah, birds have the right of way on highways. If you hit a bird while driving, you could potentially be cited for failing to yield. The law is meant to protect migratory birds traveling through Utah. The state takes wildlife conservation seriously, but practically, how are drivers supposed to avoid birds? They fly unpredictably. A bird could suddenly swoop in front of your car with zero warning. The law creates liability for accidents that are essentially unavoidable. Hitting a deer might be understandable, but hitting a sparrow could theoretically be a traffic violation. In France, you cannot name a pig Napoleon, as we've discussed repeatedly, but France also has laws about where you can die. In the town of Sarre-Pourenx, dying is prohibited without owning a burial plot in the town cemetery. The mayor issued an ordinance declaring it illegal to die if you haven't secured a cemetery plot. The reason? The cemetery was full, and the town needed to prevent people from dying without anywhere to bury them. Obviously, you cannot control when you die. The ordinance was more of a publicity stunt to draw attention to the cemetery space problem. But technically, it's on the books. The prohibition carries no actual penalty because you cannot prosecute dead people. But it highlights the absurd lengths local governments go to address practical problems. In Longyearbyen, Norway, dying is effectively prohibited. The town cemetery stopped accepting new burials in 1950 because bodies don't decompose in the permafrost. The cemetery became a preservation site rather than a decomposition site. Bodies buried there remain frozen indefinitely, which creates public health concerns. The town has limited medical facilities. People who become seriously ill are sent to mainland Norway. The authorities actively discourage dying in Longyearbyen. While not technically illegal to die there, the practical prohibition is enforced through medical evacuation policies. If you're seriously ill or elderly, you cannot live in Longyearbyen long term. In California, you cannot eat an orange in a bathtub. This law supposedly exists, though its origins are completely mysterious. Why oranges specifically? Why bathtubs? What combination of circumstances led to this prohibition? Perhaps it relates to old plumbing concerns about citrus oils. Maybe there was a bizarre accident involving bathtub orange consumption? We'll probably never know. The law is never enforced, but it appears in legal codes and weird law compilations. Californians can safely eat oranges in bathtubs without fear of prosecution. Chapter 28. Inheritance and estate laws that make no sense. What happens to your property after you die is governed by inheritance laws, and some of these regulations are remarkably strange. In Japan, if someone dies without a will, their property is divided among relatives according to complex formulas. The system can result in dozens or even hundreds of people co-owning small percentages of land. Imagine your great-grandfather owned a small house. He died without a will. His property, divided among his children. When those children died, their shares divided among their children. 3 generations later, 40 cousins each own 2.5% of one small house. Selling or developing the property requires unanimous consent from all 40 owners. Finding them all is nearly impossible. Getting them all to agree is even harder. Japan has thousands of properties in this situation. They're effectively abandoned because the ownership is too fragmented to manage. The law creates absurd situations where valuable urban land sits unused because tracking down and getting agreement from all fractional owners is impossible. In Louisiana, inheritance law is based on Napoleonic code, making it different from the rest of the United States. Forced heirship requires leaving property to children. Parents cannot completely disinherit their children like they can in other states. A portion of the estate must go to direct descendants. The law limits testamentary freedom, but protects family inheritances. Louisiana considers this more fair than systems allowing parents to leave everything to whoever they choose. This creates conflicts when Louisiana residents want to leave property to charity or non-family members. The law restricts their options. In France, similar forced heirship laws exist. Parents must leave a portion of their estate to children. The portion depends on how many children they have. With 1 child, half the estate is reserved. With 2 children, 2/3 must go to them. With 3 or more children, 3/4 is reserved. Parents can only freely dispose of the remaining portion. This prevents disinheritance and ensures family wealth stays in families. Foreign residents in France sometimes don't realize these laws apply to property they own there. Their wills might conflict with French forced heirship requirements. In Switzerland, cash inheritances above certain amounts trigger mandatory estate taxes, but the tax rates and exemptions vary by canton. Some cantons have no inheritance tax at all. Others tax estates heavily. Moving between cantons before death can dramatically affect what heirs receive. This creates incentives for wealthy elderly people to relocate to low-tax cantons in their final years. Estate planning in Switzerland requires understanding 26 different cantonal systems. What works in Zurich doesn't work in Geneva. Part 14. Final Bizarre. Examples. Chapter 29. The laws that almost broke reality. Some laws are so specific and bizarre that they deserve special recognition for sheer weirdness. In Devon, England, it's illegal to walk backwards while eating a burger on a Sunday. This combination of restrictions, direction of travel, food item, and day of week is remarkably specific. Why walking backwards? Why burgers specifically? Why only Sundays? Each restriction alone might make some weird sense. Together they create a perfect storm of legislative absurdity. The law has never been enforced in modern times, but technically, Sunday backward burger walking remains prohibited in Devon. In Alaska, waking a sleeping bear to photograph it is illegal, as we've discussed, but Alaska also prohibits pushing moose out of airplanes. The fact that this law exists means it happened. Someone pushed a moose from an airplane, and it was enough of a problem to require specific legislation. How do you get a moose into an airplane? How do you push it out? Why would anyone do this? The logistics alone are mind-boggling, but apparently it happened in Alaska, and legislators decided no more airplane moose pushing. In Arizona, camels have protected status on highways. You cannot hunt them, and you must yield to them in traffic. Arizona hasn't had wild camels for over a century. The U.S. Army's 19th century camel experiment ended long ago, but the laws protecting camels remain. If a camel somehow appeared on an Arizona highway today, it would have legal right of way. The camel protection laws stand as monuments to a brief weird moment in American military history. In Oklahoma, the laws just keep getting weirder. Beyond bear wrestling and bathtub donkeys, Oklahoma makes it illegal to have a sleeping donkey in your bathtub after 7 p.m. specifically. Before 7 p.m., bathtub donkeys are apparently fine. After 7 p.m., they're criminal. Why 7 p.m. is the cutoff? What happens at 7 p.m. that makes bathtub donkeys suddenly problematic? The specificity suggests there's a story we'll never fully know, but Oklahoma has rules about evening bathtub donkeys. In Tennessee, it's illegal to drive while sleeping. This seems obvious, of course you shouldn't drive while asleep, but the law's existence suggests people were doing it. Falling asleep at the wheel is one thing. Deliberately trying to drive while sleeping is another. Perhaps it addresses people reclining seats and engaging cruise control on long straight highways. The law prevents claiming, "I was asleep," as a defense for dangerous driving. Still, the idea that this needed specific legislation is concerning. In Minnesota, it's illegal to cross state lines with a duck on your head. We've mentioned this before, but it deserves emphasis. Minnesota to Wisconsin, duck-on-head travel is prohibited. Within Minnesota, probably fine. But crossing that border with head duck creates legal problems. The law might relate to poultry transport regulations that got worded strangely. Or maybe someone actually traveled between states with a duck on their head and it caused issues. Either way, duck-based headwear becomes legally problematic at the Minnesota border. Chapter 30. Why these laws matter beyond being entertaining. These bizarre laws teach us important lessons about legal systems and governance. First, they show that laws reflect specific cultural moments and concerns. Every weird law made sense to someone when it was passed. Understanding the context helps us see why. Legislators thought these regulations were necessary. Second, they reveal that legal systems resist change. Removing outdated laws requires effort, and legislators focus on pressing current issues rather than cleaning up old statutes. This means legal codes accumulate absurdities over time. Every generation adds laws, addressing contemporary concerns while rarely removing obsolete ones. Third, these laws demonstrate that enforcement matters more than existence. Technically, illegal activities happen constantly because laws aren't enforced. This creates a legal environment where technical violations are everywhere, giving authorities selective enforcement power. Everyone breaks some laws, so enforcement becomes discretionary. Fourth, they show that no legal system is perfect. Every country, regardless of development level or governmental system, has weird laws. Legal absurdity is universal. Finally, they remind us that we're currently creating tomorrow's weird laws. Our regulations about social media, cryptocurrency, and artificial intelligence will seem as bizarre to future generations as camel hunting bans and telegraph regulations seem to us. The laws we've explored aren't just historical curiosities. They're part of living legal systems that affect real people in practical ways. That Singaporean fine for not flushing a toilet experienced real consequences from a weird law. The French woman who can wear pants because enforcement lapsed benefits from non-enforcement of an absurd law. Understanding these laws helps us think critically about all laws. Just because something is legal doesn't make it sensible. Just because something is illegal doesn't mean it's wrong. Laws are human creations reflecting human concerns, biases, and mistakes. They deserve respect, but also critical examination. The bizarre laws we've explored remind us to question, to laugh, to think critically about the rules governing our lives. So the next time you encounter a law that seems ridiculous, remember, every law has a story. Sometimes that story makes the law make sense. Sometimes it just makes it more absurd. Either way, understanding the stories behind laws helps us understand the societies that created them and the humans trying to navigate them. And remember, somewhere, right now, a legislature is debating a law that future generations will find hilarious. We're all part of creating tomorrow's list of bizarre laws that still exist. Until next time, watch out for those suspicious salmon. Don't flush too late in Switzerland. Keep your pigs away from the name Napoleon. And whatever you do, don't cross the Minnesota border with a duck on your head. Stay curious, stay legal, mostly. And remember, the law is always stranger than you think, and that's probably never changing. Thanks for joining this extended journey through legal absurdity around the world. Keep questioning, keep laughing, and keep appreciating that wherever you are, whatever laws you deal with, someone somewhere has it legally weirder.